Right. And so Thomas Henry Huxley, who Darwin's bulldog, got us all screwed up, I think. And the way he did that was to say consciousness can't be a causal thing.
Right.
Because it's like the steam whistle of a locomotive. This is the industrial age, right? And locomotives are, everybody thinks about locomotives. And they may not know much about them, but they think about them. They're a huge symbol of power and speed and all that.
Right.
And so Thomas Henry Huxley said that, well, the steam whistle is kind of a side effect of the locomotive. And maybe consciousness is like that. It's just,
so it's sort of an epiphenomenon. It's epiphenomenal.
Epiphenomenon was the word that philosophers picked up from Huxley.
Right.
And ever since then, we've been really confused. And this happens in the history of ideas, doesn't it?
It sure does.
Some idea gets planted, some metaphor gets planted, and everybody gets all excited about it. And people who are a little scared of studying consciousness, because let's face it, it's a scary thing for people, and for very good reasons. I don't doubt that for a moment. So this is a kind of scary topic, and at that time, certainly people would rather not know. And so the idea of it's a side effect, it really has nothing to do with the steam vessel that drives the wheels.
Right.
And that's, of course, wrong. That's the wrong kind of physics, right? Because there's conservation of energy, and the steam whistle takes off power and energy from the steam vessel.
There are sort of these causal entailments that you can't ignore. They're there. There's no doubt.
Exactly. So the steam whistle is actually not an epiphenomenon.
Right.
The steam whistle is part of the thermodynamics of steam.
Right.
As a major discovery of the time, and for trains and for moving people back and forth and so on. And so, as a biologist, let's put on your biologist hat. And how would you deal with that claim, that hypothesis, that consciousness is an epiphenomenon?
So Huxley had this view that consciousness really wasn't causal. And I don't think that I certainly don't agree with that, as at least as stated by him. I think it probably is causal, but there is a problem, and the problem is that, again, it's not directly doing something in the world. It's as in it's not, a motor neuron, and it's not directly pulling in the world. It's somewhere in the middle of all of that, and so I think to the extent that it affects what we do in the future, it does have a sort of a causal role, but it's a very strange terrain to try to negotiate, I think. And my late dad, had some issues with this. And in fact, he didn't really think it was directly causal. I mean, that's the way, at least he framed it in some of his later work. But this is an ongoing issue. It's an ongoing debate. And it does relate to the function of consciousness, of course, because if Huxley were right and it isn't causal, well, then what possible function could it serve?
Right.
And how could it possibly have been sort of under, or the components of conscious processing have been under some sort of selection pressure or something,
It couldn't have evolved.
Yeah, in essence, if it were it would have been insulated from any kind of sort of pressure to evolve, in a sense, if it didn't have any sort of causal role.